So just a little story on the way to the park. Still walking down there because the bikes have like doubled in price now, seemingly, you know, due to massive demand, due to like soon to own nothing and be happy. But anyways, just a short story on like an example of like what it is like to live with these NPDs and how they mentally torture you and physically degrade you while staying within the limits of the law. And I'm sharing this because I think people who haven't been through it, they can't really comprehend like the devastation that someone could achieve while staying, you know, as I say, while not breaking the law. And you know, I try to tell the story as detailed as I can, and again, I couldn't give any less of a fuck about oversharing, because the worst people in the world already know all about me, you know, the ones running it, so whatever, I don't give a shit. But anyway, I realised like you can never actually truly transfer your experience or, you know, immerse someone else into the experience you've had fully, because they're never going to get all the minute aspects of it, the horror, you know, how it made you feel, just all the little minuscule dynamics of it. But anyway, so I'll get into it. So one thing my father used to do to utterly torment me was he would do poison spraying when we lived out on a little farm. And it needed to be done, you know, I can admit that. It was such a giant property, you know, it was like 10 acres and lots of paths and, you know, fence lines and all the rest of it, so it wasn't practical to keep weed whacking it. But the problem was he was an absolute fucking maniac with when it came to like being dangerous with things, like not having any degree of like caution. And so obviously with serious, you know, pesticides and herbicides, it's common sense to be kind of careful with that stuff. But he would be absolutely nonchalant about it, and he would like mix it up in the garage, right, in the basin, and then he would move all the shit over to this cabinet over the other side of the garage. Meantime, he's just dropping a trail of poison, undiluted poison, on the floor of the garage, you know, and I can see that because some of it is coloured, like coloured powder. And we had cats and dogs at this property, so obviously, you know, that's a big concern. If you love your animals, you don't want them walking through the poison, licking their paws and dying or getting really sick at the least. But he couldn't give a shit. You know, in any protests, it's just the old deny, gaslight, you know, call you mad, you're mad. It's the kind of bullshit I had to deal with. Yeah, every weekend almost. Because he loved poisoning things, just like a narc, you know, loves to poison everything. It's kind of apt, really. Again, you know, I admit it had to be done, but you could do it in a very careful way. You could make sure you didn't spill any of it. You could tell people that you're doing it, so that they don't go out on the lawn and have a fucking game with their dog straight after you've poisoned the lawn. The dog's running around picking up his toy off the lawn, you know, having a good play session for half an hour, and then you find out later you know, they just poisoned the fucking lawn, like all the weeds on it, which was a shitload. And you've been running around in bare feet with it, and the dog's been picking up toys and, you know, licking his fucking paws and all the rest of it. And then it would just, you know, I guess you could say it evoked my narcissistic rage. That's how the normie would see it. I'm a narcissist, I'm raging. Whereas in my mind it's reactive abuse, because, you know, he never fucking told me. That he poisoned the lawn. And this happened it happened about every month for about 4 months. And it wouldn't matter how big a bust up you had. They would do the same thing again next month. It wouldn't even matter. So in that situation, you just end up falling into a fucking depression, because you can't reason with them. And then all that would happen is the narc will get more sneaky, more covert, and they'll try to deny that they've poisoned. And it's, in my case at least, it was fucking obvious, because they're not very clever when it comes to blue collar stuff. You know, I'd walk outside and I'd see these like oil stains around all the weeds, and it was obvious that they'd poisoned, but they'd just deny it and call you crazy. And again, you know, I understand it has to happen. There's no way well, there is actually ways you can keep weeds down. You could use, like, without using poison, you could use a flame wand or whatever you call it, but they're very expensive and they take a lot of time to use. And anyways, like, that aside, the narc loves to poison things. He couldn't give a shit about the damage it's doing to the, you know, to the family, to any of it, you know, the nature, ecosystem, long-term poisoning of the property, of the earth. Couldn't give a fuck. And so this was probably one of the most devastating things for me. That it was a very, very, like, well played, I don't know, trauma skit, whatever you want to call it. Like, it was so genius that this is actually one of the main reasons why I don't think some of these narcs are in charge of their own minds when they do some of this stuff. So after about 4 years of him spilling poisons on this cabinet, this timber cabinet that was in the garage where he kept all his 4 different varieties of poisons. Oh, and by the way, the cat lived above that in this little loft, so the poor old cat would jump up on that poison cabinet and you know, probably walk about the surface, and then he would jump onto the loft and, you know, presumably lick his paws and sleep up there. And I would try to cover that cabinet with like a plastic bag, just a rubbish bag. I think I stapled a plastic rubbish bag on there one time, and he just got totally fucking enraged, you know, because they just got into this, like, outright denial. You know, there is no poison, I didn't spill anything. And so yeah, I couldn't even have it that plastic bag stayed over the top of the poison cabinet, just as a way to try to keep the animals safe. he would tear it off in a fucking rage, you know. Walking by someone. It's a little kid, so I don't want to be talking about this stuff in front of them. But you can imagine, like, if you've been in this kind of dynamic before, you can imagine the tension in under the roof of the home, you know. And me knowing I can't do anything to protect myself or the cat or the dog, and we're just at the mercy of this lunatic, pretty much. Doesn't give a fuck, doesn't have any concern about how bad these poisons are, and you're worried every next weekend when he's going to get back into it. What's next? How bad is he going to fuck it up this time, you know? And by the way, I heard a story from a guy I meet in the park sometimes, of a guy who was totally nonchalant about poisons, and he ended up like poisoning himself really badly, and ended up dying of like all this multiple organ failure like over about a week. And as harsh as it sounds, that's what my fucking family member deserved, man, after he did all this shit. But all that happened was the dog got ill. It didn't kill the dog, he just ended up like losing a lot of hair and getting like a red rash and really bad eczema, you know, and it was obvious. It was around his paws and his belly, where he would sit out on the ground outside where the poison cabinet was placed when it had its work done on it, which that was the thing that traumatized me to fuckery. That was like the genius, I would say, archon manipulation of my father. I don't see how he could have thought of doing something that insane. In my mind, it was totally insane. Anyways, I don't know what anyone, thinks who listens to this. I was just seeing if my friend was in. I know someone who just walked past their property. So yeah, after 4 years or 5 years, whatever it was, of poison being continually spilt on this cabinet, this wooden cabinet, which has it has like this chipboard surface, the top of it is made of that, and when chipboard gets wet, it tends to expand when it's really saturated. And this top of the cabinet, it was about 2 millimeters kind of expanded, if you get what I mean, from being saturated in undiluted, concentrated poisons for so long. We're talking like 4 highly fucking deadly herbicides and pesticides, all combined and spilt together to create some sort of super fucking poisoner. And I can't remember the specifics, but I got wind of like he was planning to do something with the cabinet after me like needlessly being dramatic and complaining about it for so long. And then one day, to my horror, he did the worst possible thing you could possibly ever think to do with it. You know, I had said we should probably cut the top off the cabinet or put another top over the contaminated surface of it, you know, the contaminated top of the cabinet. But no, that would have been like too safe and too sane, and instead, fuck's sake, it's like school, it's after school, so there's like people everywhere. Just trying to find a place I can talk about this. Might have to go the other side of the road. Oh man, it's typical. I'm gonna keep talking though, just tell my story to the whole street if I have to. What does it matter, eh? None of them give a fuck. So anyway, he decided in his infinite fucking wisdom, and I think this is definitely some Archon intervention or something, he decided to sand it, you know, to sand a massively contaminated, you know, chunk of timber, whatever you want to call it, the surface of this thing. And he sanded this cabinet for probably like 2 weeks. And the sanding dust's going everywhere. He at least put it outside the garage, but still, he's standing in it every day. He's getting like the sanding dust all over his shoes, you know, especially when the grass has got dew on it. He's just walking into the house every hour, you know, go and make a sandwich. Of course, you know, never washes his hands, so all that sanding dust, you know, undiluted straight poison in dust form, just to make it ultra fucking dangerous. He's just making a sandwich, going through all the fridge. You know, many of these pesticides and herbicides, you're meant to actually dilute them like 100 or 1,000 times, and even then they're bad for you. So yeah, it freaked me the hell out, and it went on for 10 days. We're having this massive row every day. He's walking through the house, spreading it everywhere, and he's sanding it in a place like at the front of the garage, at the top of the driveway, where my dog, that was his favourite place to sit and roll and, you know, do all those lovely dog things. So he's sitting there rolling around and, you know, in this fucking ultra deadly sanding dust. And I get out there trying to, like, at night, of course, because I don't want any drama. You know, I know that if he sees me trying to, like, clean up the scene or make it less dangerous, he's going to go off at me. So I'm out there at midnight, 1 a.m, trying to do this stuff, you know, trying to water down the fucking sanding dust and water it down into the drain, and then hopefully by morning it'll dry out, but it never did. And, you know, this guy's so fucking gormless that he thought it was rain. He thought it had rained overnight when it hadn't. It was just that I'd hosed it all down. Hosed down the courtyard, or whatever you want to call it. So it was like a really genius, undoable catastrophe that couldn't be, you know, remedied, really. You couldn't put every little sanding, dusty thing back in the bottle, you know, or back in the whatever in the dumpster. In my mind, at least, it was miles worse than if it had been liquid, because in liquid form, at least it's not going to go airborne. You know, they make a point of telling you not to breathe in the spray droplets, even when it's in diluted form. And so because I'm quite a thinker, in my mind I'm just like, my mind's spinning like, you know, what are all the implications of what he's doing right now? What happens when they vacuum the house? You know, there's all this poison dust trampled into the carpets. It's like 1,000 times, you know, over the safety limit of, you know, when it's diluted. It's ultra concentrated, 4 different poisons combined into one in a weaponized sanding dust form. And what are the implications of me breathing that in? You know, I think that's a fair thing to wonder about. It's not like Monsanto have ever done like, you know, experiments with rats to put like weaponized dust contaminated at, you know, 100% concentrated full strength to see what would happen. Because, you know, no plonk is ever gonna use their product like that. I'm sure they'd be ecstatic to hear that someone did. You know, the types that own these corporations, they would have thought it was hilarious. But you know, anyway, I was freaking the hell out over that, and I think that's a fair concern. Of course, you know, the overt narc, the one who did it, was just like, you're mad, you know, you're nuts, you're fucking crazy. But I was actually a really conscientious person. I would barely ever use those fucking poisons. I used to do it myself, you know, very safely. I'd wear gloves and everything, and it still fucked me up, those poisons. You know, we had like hundreds of meters of property boundaries to keep grass free, and there's a little margin behind the fences about 1 meter wide that it's just so tedious to like weed whack it all the time and, you know, stop things growing back. I mean, there are ways to go spray free, but it's, you know, even if you're all on the same page, and it's just a huge amount of work. It's another topic anyway. I just wanted to tell this story. I haven't even really painted a very good picture of it, but you can see by the emotion, like, this is how you end up living in a horrorscape where you're terrified of your own family. And this is how you appear insane. You just shut yourself away in your room, which is what I did, because I couldn't reason with either of them. This is the kind of like reactive behaviour that it appears strongly that a large amount of this mental health, whatever you want to call it, they never acknowledge that. They just say like, oh, this person's behaving like a shut-in. That's crazy. You know, give them pills. You know, label them. It's never, oh, who did this to you? Like, what happened to you? Oh, that's abuse there. We'll make them fucking, you know, we'll make them front up to doing that to you. But instead it's like, no, they own the property, so they can basically do whatever they want to you. Within reason, you know, as long as they don't physically assault you. You can pretty much do anything else. The law doesn't give a shit. No one else does either, you know, neighbours don't care. And it doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter how bad it gets. So the other dynamic of this is the covert narc mother. She was just like kind of I don't know how to phrase it cleverly, but she's just another abuse dynamic in this. she would say, when I showed her the poison cabinet outside, and was trying to say like all that sanding dust is fucking dangerous. It's going to blow around in the wind, and you know, you get a big fucking northwest wind which blows at about maybe like 60 k's an hour sometimes. That dust's going to be blowing around everywhere, and we're going to be breathing it in. The dog's going to be breathing it in. Poor old dog's walking through that dust every day, licking his paws. As I say, like, his paws got red raw. His chest got red raw, he lost a lot of hair. Both my fucking folks, they both gaslighted me on that, said like, oh no, it's just an allergy. He's just got pollen allergies. And we've had 3 other sorts of this same breed of dog. They've never had that. Never had hair loss and skin rashes, and you know, all over his fucking chest, bright red raw. And this motherfucking plonker, my old man, I don't give a fuck about like oversharing or anything. He's so lucky that he'll never even realise what he did. He'll never even have to own that, the damage that he did to myself and my pets. Fuck, I've only got three more minutes before this clip runs out. So yeah, the covert narc mother, she, I finally one day managed to get her to look at the cabinet out there. It was just out there on the lawn where he'd been sanding it for, as I say, for 2 weeks. And all the grass around that cabinet, sure enough, I was right, no fucking surprise there. The grass all turned yellow within 3 days, maybe 4 days, but even faster than usual. And then it just got undeniable. It was just bright fucking yellow all around the cabinet. And she was like, oh, it's just moss. It's just moss, it's not grass, it's yellow moss. It's not dying grass, you know, from the sanding dust killing it because it's so contaminated with poisons. And then even after he moved the cabinet finally, and the grass under it is bright green and healthy because no dust could get on it, you know, because the cabinet was on it. Even then, they still gaslighted. What's your problem? Oh no, it's just moss. And the reason why I think he was under some sort of influence of mind control or something to do that thing, I don't believe he did it all for his own narcissistic supply. I don't think he's calculated like that. The reason why is because it's just genius to sand such a poisonous substance, you know, such a contaminated bit of wood, knowing there's no way to clean that up. It's literally impossible. This is one of the few things I actually did mention to the counsellor that I went to. I went to a counsellor for 3 sessions because I thought Gulf were going to pay for it, and they promised they would, but then they backed out of that, so I had to pay for that as well. Motherfuckers. And he was useless. He really was. Like, he was just reassuring me, oh no, it's all fine. You're just blowing it out of proportion. You know, he wouldn't fucking know what the effect of breathing in that dust was. That poison dust that was contaminating my whole fucking home. You know, he didn't have to live there. And that's just the only way to find a solution there, is just to, you know, to give me some false bullshit reassurance that it was fine. Anyway, I got to stop this one reluctantly. There's a lot more to it, but it's just a taste of like one of the ways your family can totally fuck you up and break you mentally.